just don't see it any other way. I'm too weak to make the climb. I need a miracle this time. That's when.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC in Christ Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications. You know, that's local to North Alabama. And you are also on worldwide TV right now. That's Abundant TV, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Again, thank you so much for watching. You are super awesome. And you know you're the apple of my eye. I know you could be doing anything else, but you're watching this show right now. And I wanted to thank you for the messages you send. That really lifts my day too. Again, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get started. We only have a few minutes, especially with this guy, because when we get started, I don't know if there's going to be a cutting off time or what. Jael Musicman is with us right now. And let's go a little bit into your background and let's go ahead and get started.
Sure. What would you like to know?
How did you get started, first of all, in music?
Well, I've always loved music, and I kind of grew up in a house that was very, we had two kinds of music in the house. We had kind of a gospel, quartet style stuff, and we had classical, and that was it. And my father pumped music. He put speakers in all the bedrooms. It was the way he woke us up in the morning. And so he always had something going on, and it wasn't stuff that I was particularly drawn to, but I paid a lot of attention to it. When I first heard the very first guitar was a country gospel guy named Wilf Carter. That was the very first album that I got my hands on. Started listening to that. I started thinking, it's simple music. It's some music I can understand. And so I bought a guitar, and it was a real cheap junker. And I took almost an inch to push down the strings onto the fretboard. So my fingers got tough quick. But I learned to play on my own, and I began to write songs at the age of about 14. And before that, I'd sung in choirs and done stuff and had one record that I was involved in. But that was a Windsor a cappella choir. They traveled the world, actually, but we were singing a cappella under the direction of a great man who eventually ended up directing music for the Urbana conference back in the 70s. Anyway, all of that led me to, keeping going with writing music. And it took me about 25 songs, I think, until I wrote an actual good one. Everything sounds good to you when you're a kid and you're trying to, start something off. But I actually had some feedback from a guy who had a record out who actually really liked my 25th song. It was like, oh, that's encouragement. So probably another 25 before I wrote another good one. But started recording music with a band of high school kids that I was, trying to put together, and didn't work out very well. We never recorded anything, and then went off to college, still very young. I went to college when I was 17, and I put a band together there. And that's the first band that actually recorded stuff, and we started selling cassettes that we kind of recorded off of concerts. So that's where we began.
That's really, and then you went on to greater acclaim as well.
Yeah, about 10 projects in, 8 or 10, I can't remember exactly what, but we finally went in a studio, and I had a guy named Ron Moore, who was a contemporary Christian artist, who was really, I thought, an amazing guy, but very strong encouragement to me, who suggested that, I should do an album of original songs. And we put together 10 songs that we thought were great. It expanded into 12 eventually, or 11 with a reprise or something, I don't know. But anyway, we recorded a vinyl record. We went to RCA and mastered it, and I got encouragement from the mastering studio. And so everybody was very excited and complimentary. And so we just kept going. And so I did 3 projects like that were independent, that was primarily contemporary Christian music. And then I felt a real need to move on and to do something different. And there was a real specific reason for that.
So that's real good. Now I want to talk to you about, now where you calling, you're coming in from Canada, is that right?
That's right. That's where I live at the moment.
Now you were from the States.
Well, my mother was, and I was actually born in Canada. That's why I'm back here. I got married here, and I'll have a lot of family connections here. That's why I came back. But I have traveled the world, and I've lived in the States for a lot of years. I've been in California, had an address there. Oklahoma, had an address there. Florida for about 3 months, and I think anyway, I moved around a lot. I lived in Michigan. I lived in New York State. So I've seen a lot of the states and know a lot about it in terms of the practical living from the different areas. I know how they feel. I know there is a difference between the North and the South. A lot of people don't up here in Canada.
That's true. Absolutely. So you're working on a project right now, and you want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We're just getting ready to launch a project, actually. When you say working on it, we're working on the movie soundtrack parts of it now, which are the instrumental versions of the things that we've got out. But what's really exciting is that we decided, I have a team, and it's a volunteer team. So we've gone through probably 50, 60 musicians. We're kind of like a rotating group of people that keep coming back into my life and going away. And some of them are in Florida, and some of them are in California, and some of them are in Canada. So I have this group of people, and they're kind of a core group, and we sit down and we talk. But I usually am the spearhead. I kind of decide I want to do this. I've written over 3,000 songs, so this sort of give me my my head when it comes to doing a new project. So I talk to them about what's going on in the world, and the issue of government overreach as far as the church was concerned was so egregious to me. We watched people in Canada being thrown in jail and their churches confiscated, and people don't understand this, that they are still in jail. They don't get it, that these prosecutions are still ongoing, and the Canadian government has come down very hard on any Christian who dares to believe that God says we should meet together, and that we should lay hands on the sick and pray for them, and they'll get better. They don't want to believe that, so they don't want to tolerate anybody who does. So Arthur Pawlowski out in the West was feeding the hungry when they arrested him, and decided that he was violating COVID rules by feeding hungry people, even though the government refused to do it. And so I just thought there's something we got to do here, and I felt that with the fines piling up, and we had a local pastor who was being fined about $200,000 for doing the simple work of trying to believe God for what he meant. And I just said, well, we got to help. We got to do something. So we got the band together. We said, would you be willing to volunteer your time and let's put some concerts on and raise money for these guys? Well, one thing led to another. Of course, I wrote the music, so it ended up in an album, and then a second album, then a third album. And so we've actually got 3 on the table. One of them is a Christmas record, but it's not your normal happy Christmas record. It's kind of a very, very confrontational thing, just like the one we've got out. So the Feeling Used Yet album was one we're talking about. That's about ready to come out. The others are still in the process, but that's another, leave that alone. The one we've got right now is phenomenal, and I've got a pre-release thing out there for Name Your Own Price. You can download it right now, and it's not coming out till July 29th.
Mm-hmm. Well, music has a way of getting the message out. You can put a voice to it. Even writing a book just it's not the same as a song. Is putting that out there. Let's talk with folks just for a few minutes about your point of view in the state of our country and the world, the United States and the world. How different are things in Canada than right here in the United States?
Well, in some ways, we're a smaller country in Canada, and therefore it's kind of less onerous in some ways, because if the United States government gets on you, I mean, it's really hard to fight. In Canada, it's a little easier to fight back. But on the other hand, the Canadian government is being far more repressive than the States is right now. As much as you see all the egregious things going on and government overreach, what you don't have a move towards totalitarianism, which basically thumbs its nose at the people and says, we don't care, we don't want to listen to you. And we're going to bring guns to the party and make sure that you don't have any. So we have people being run over by, basically trampled by police horses that They don't really care. They just ride right through because they can. And you have no weapons. You have no way to defend yourself. They're not afraid of you. So they just do it. And so we've got this kind of thing going on. It's I can't tell you in some ways how bad it is. We've got a bill that just passed through government called C-11, which was basically gave the government total complete control over deciding what goes on the internet for you. So I mean, it's very difficult for us to even stay connected at this point, because if you say something wrong, they have the ability to shut you down.
Well, we feel like that's happening here. We've had it in small doses, and it's almost like a snowball effect. I mean, it's really going into a huge snowball at this point.
Well, yeah, but you've had it from the corporation point of view, and we've had the same thing, because what happens in the States affects Canada. So we've been lockstep with that. What is different about this is that when it comes to YouTube, not fact checking you or pulling you off, what they have is they have the ability to control what you get to see. So when YouTube makes suggestions to you, you will not be ever located. And if you try to follow somebody and ask to see their content, the government can say no. You can't see that content when they put something up.
Well, how does this happen? Is it through the algorithms? I mean, how does this happen?
Well, yeah, everybody, these big corporations have been in bed with the government entities ever since they wanted to be in China. They had to learn to live with the restrictions, and they had to develop the restriction capacity to do these things. And so Trudeau, knowing that, went to them and said, if you don't do that for Canada, you'll pay these massive fines, or you won't operate in our country. We'll just shut you down completely.
Now, on your point of view, you're on the outside looking in at us at this point.
Yep.
Is there any way we can turn this thing around as far as your viewpoint?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, that's why we do the album. Feeling Used Yet is not, it's speaking truth to power in a very serious way. And it ranges in style from humor to, the little guy who's downtrodden and everything. Third song on that record was a song called Day is Dawning. It's a country song written for the Canadian Truckers Convoy. And yet it's appropriate all over the world. It doesn't, mention Canada. But at the same time, speaking truth to power is, I think, half of the solution. It's doing the right thing, but without the power of God, I don't see how this is going to turn around. I don't see a political situation without a revival coming. To be honest, that's my solution to it. I think it's all about how we respond to God. It's interesting. He says in the Bible, he says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, I will heal their land. Now, I'm abbreviating there in a little bit, but here's the point. It doesn't say if the majority of people do it. It says if my people do it. So people on his team, if we will get serious about what he has to say, he can change the majority. And I think what's happening right now is there's a blinders on the majority of people. And that just needs to come off. That the spiritual blindness has to come away from people's eyes. And the only way that's going to happen is when we, his people, get serious.
Do you think it's a point of laziness? Because it's easy just to be spoon-fed, let the news media tell you how to think, how to walk, how to eat, how to do everything. Do you think it's a little bit of laziness in some ways?
Yeah, it's hard to point fingers and say, y'all need to do this. That's the easy part. The hard part is pointing the fingers back at yourself and saying, what do I got to change about me? What do I got to do different today than I did yesterday? And I think that's where it starts with all of us. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting here not being too critical, because I realize, blind people are not to blame that they're blind. They're to be blamed for not seeking help, perhaps. But blindness is a problem. It means they simply can't see. And I think rather than, be overly critical of people that can't do stuff, I'm more interested in what can I do as a as a child of God, what does God want me to do? What do I need to do to be obedient today? And if I can do that, and then somebody said this. They said, you can work and God will watch, or you can pray and God will work and you can watch. And it's kind of like, yeah, I like that. So maybe that's the lazy way. I don't know, but that's a good.
Saves a lot of shoe leather. It really does. It really does
Well,
do it that way
it,
and ask for guidance.
it is hard, and I'm not saying don't do what you can do. I'm not saying don't vote. I'm plus, please understand this. I'm all for being in the fight, and I'm not for laying down and just letting people walk over you. But I think that's part of God's command. He says, to occupy till he comes. Occupy means control. It means be in charge. Get the government on your side. It doesn't mean, go back and lay down and just forget it. It doesn't mean that we're going to have an easy time occupying either, because occupiers are never liked by the people they occupy. And so we're not looking to win popularity contests. We're looking to do what's right and to hold the line for what's right, and everybody will benefit whether they like it or not.
Do you feel like that this is something that just kind of slipped on us, or something that's been going on for, say, decades?
Oh,
And it finally just got it.
It's been a slippery slope. Things do not happen overnight. I mean, we've been allowing this kind of nonsense for a long time. I mean, I have to be honest about, church. I'm a solid Christian, and yet I find myself at odds with most of the churches out there. Why? Well, most of the Canadian churches went along with the government, and most of the Canadian churches have dropped in their membership probably 75%. And the ones that didn't, those are flourishing, but they're very, very few of them. And the people who are actually taking God serious, people who are doing what I think is the right thing, these are few and far between. And I'll listen to people, and the preachers that have been on, my watch list for a long time. I pray for these people, but I don't think they're actually. I don't know. I question whether or not they're actually Christians. I think they're career people who've chosen a pathway and decided that motivational speaking was for them.
It most certainly feels that way. But I want to ask your opinion about this. A lot of folks, including me, would say the politically correct agenda actually began in church. And the reason I'm saying that is, you don't want to say anything with somebody that could be putting a lot of money in your church.
Yeah, I've watched that happen. I was up close and personal with that one, because I have a church that my grandfather actually was one of four families that started that church, and I was involved in that church, and left because of issues of the same thing you're talking about. Somebody was putting in so much money, they didn't want to be the elders, and the power structure of the church decided not to challenge them. It was like they were definitely teaching the wrong things, and definitely on the Marxist side of the agenda. And we were like, no, we can't tolerate that. So we left. Well, years later, we went back, and they're struggling. They're having all kinds of problems. They're really glad to see us, because we're the first people in there I think, for years to come in new. And we came in and we took a look at stuff, and we said, well, you see the problem. So we kind of at the time, we kind of led some a movement of repentance in the place, and they kind of turned away from that for a little bit. But it didn't take but 2 years before all the pressures were back and all the nonsense was going on, and the politics was as usual. And I felt like, okay, so we had to leave again. We started a home church. I said, that's enough. I'm done.
Do you think a minister over his congregation should give his opinion about a political election?
I think it's wrong for the government to say he shouldn't. I'm not going to say that he, in every case, I think he needs to have a healthy respect for the opinions of everyone. But I think at the same time, there are right and wrong things. I think that the preacher should always comment on what's right and wrong about a platform of politics. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to say support this individual or that person, but it means that if it's wrong to kill babies, and somebody's running on a platform to make sure that you can, it's like, that person does not deserve your vote. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. We had a pastor, this has been 20, 25 years ago. And I really liked the way he handled it. And this is back before it got as rough as it is now. It was bad enough then. But he would hand out ballots, and he wouldn't say vote for this person or don't vote for that person. He would just say, this is this particular person's platform.
Yeah,
Not a Christian platform. And that's what he would do.
You know what? Even as a teaching elder in the church that I left, I would try to explain platforms to people and explain what people were standing for. And a lot of people just would look at me and say, that's not your place. You shouldn't be doing that. And I would say, well, argue with God, because he's the one who said these things in black and white. And I'm not backing down, but I'm not using the church as my platform to politically influence anybody to any person. But I said, I'm certainly going to comment on the platform, whether it's right or wrong.
Well, no political person is God at all. I mean, we all know that. But I think it's very important who you do vote for, or if you don't vote at all. You know, first of all, if you don't vote, I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear anything.
Well, it's impossible to occupy till he comes unless you're voting. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You can't do what he told you to do. So if you're willing to disobey God, go ahead, don't vote.
Yeah, there you go. How do you feel, in your opinion, about our last presidential election? You know, some would say, and I'm going to have to say me included, there was a lot of cheating going on there.
I totally saw that. There's no way you can convince me, I don't care who you are, that Joe Biden was more popular than Barack Obama, because he did get more votes. He turned out more people to vote for him, according to the official count, than Barack Obama did by a landslide. So you tell me that that's actually true, and I'll tell you, I think
I don't believe it. We actually went to Rome, Georgia. And so we went to see President Trump. This was the weekend before the election. And I'm talking people of all ages were out there. It wasn't just old fogies like me. I mean, I'm talking about tons of young people were out there. Yeah. And also, I know a Hispanic lady who lives in my area, and she said, I don't know of any single Hispanic person who voted for Biden. She said they all voted for Trump. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, because they left Mexico to get away from all that, you know, and they didn't want to vote for Biden. But it appears as if Hispanics voted, you know, the black population all voted for Biden. And I'm not.
I don't think that's actually true. And I think, and here's the bottom line for me. It's like, you know, people say, well, he cheated, he did this and he did that. And I say, well, you know what? Here's the thing that they're not counting on. God can count votes. And he has he knows what the country is doing, and he knows what it's not doing. He knows where it needs to change, and he'll allow things to go on in order for us to change, but it's not to leave us alone. It's like people think, you know, where is God? He's abandoned us. No, I think God is right on it, and he's doing exactly what we need to wake us up. And he's saying, you know, if you'll turn to me, I'll fix it, but you got to turn to me. And I wasn't going to leave you where you are, and I'm not going to let you go back there. So the idea of returning to, let's get back to normal, you know, Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, he said, you know, we all want to go back to all the things that we like doing and that we want to do. We want to have those freedoms. It's like, wait a minute. The real freedom is to be having the power to do what you ought to do, to be able to do the right thing. It's not to do everything we want to do. And so he's got this mentality that says, you know, it's all about me. It's all about making me happy. It's all about making me satisfied with what's going on. I say, no, only when you have God's perspective can what makes you happy make your neighbor happy too. And that's the problem, is we're not there. We're all thinking like it's just about, as long as my comfort zone doesn't get disturbed, I'm okay. It's like, no. How about this? When our founding fathers got together and wrote a constitution, they wrote it so that the majority couldn't step on the rights of the individual. They did that so we didn't have a democracy, we had a republic. Because the rule of law, the idea that God was over all things, was more important than the will and the vote of the majority. And we got away from that. We think that somehow or other we need a democracy, that we need to have everybody's vote count. And it's like, no, that's not the purpose of the whole foundation of the United States. And as far as I'm concerned, it's like the most legitimate government ever formed, the best government ever formed on the earth, other than that which God ran himself. Mm-hmm. So, and whenever you have people in there in the middle, I mean, since Moses, I don't think there was a good one, you know, in Egypt, in Israel. So that's how it is.
Well, let me ask you a question about we've got about 3 minutes left in this segment. I wish we had more time. So let's talk about this for a few minutes. And
Sure.
You are on boots on the ground. You listen to other people who talk about our president of the United States, Joe Biden. What are the real people saying about our president?
From the international point of view, and I'm fortunate as a musician because I have an audience in a bunch of countries, and so they do talk to me about this stuff. And honestly, Joe Biden is the laughingstock of the world. He is not respected. He's not seen as anybody who's competent or capable, and they see him being his strings are being pulled. Most of them suspect they're being pulled by Barack Obama. And they don't have any respect for Obama either. So it's like they had respect for Trump. That's one thing. They may not like him, and there's a lot of people who don't. But it was always, you know, you cannot like him. You better pay attention when he's talking.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I liked him, and he didn't hurt my feelings. But now my dad was a lot like him too, so I kind of grew up with somebody with that attitude. But it's always for our best. I mean, it was, you know, it's always, you know, this is the way it should be, and growth, you know, what's best for the country.
Yeah,
well, you gotta like that. I don't understand how you could not like that kind of an attitude.
Yeah, my take on Trump was he was a man that loved America, whether you agreed with all of his, you know, faux pas and everything else didn't really matter. He was a man who loved America. He loved the concept of America, and he wanted a republic back. That's what I took away from it. And you know, so you can argue with specifics. You can argue with, you know, the individual actions that he took, or you can dig stuff up and dirt out of his background if you want. But ultimately, the goal of a Christian is to forgive anyway. And so it's like, okay, where's he going now? What's he doing now? What's he saying now? How's he moving? If he's moving toward God, let me encourage that. I don't want to be a discouragement to that. When he says, you know, I want to know what God has for this country, and I want to go there. I want to cooperate, even if he's not personally 100% on board. He's moving that way, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. So I don't make any predictions. I don't jump on anything. I don't promote any particular person, but I certainly did like that about him.
I did too. We're going to have to kind of pick this up again. Less than 20 seconds left. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, God bless you. And I hope we do get a chance to do it again.
Oh, we will. We definitely will. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to be back shortly with another guest. Thank you again so much for watching. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. So you hang in there.
Mountain, I just don't see it any other